Hey, what's up guys? It's Luke at Black Sheep 217 on the Pokemon Trading Card Game official site and at Zoom Battle Gym on Facebook. I just made a page there, and so check it out. I have links to some videos that I also have on YouTube. These videos here that you're watching now. So check it out. I'd love to friend you both in Pokemon the game and also on Facebook so we can keep up with each other and maybe even get a game or two. I think that'd be a whole lot of fun. I'm trying to make connections with other Pokemon players, so if you want to jump on board, let's do that, because I'm going to be hosting tournaments and online play on Zoom. I think it's the perfect way to play during these crazy times that we're having right now. So jump onto Zoom, friend me, and let's play. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the first deck that they actually give you when you play Pokemon online, and it's Mental Might. And man, you need some mental might in order to play this deck effectively. It is a very difficult deck to win with, and my first thoughts on this deck are it needs a lot of help. I mean, this deck is meant for you to just sort of get your feet wet with the Pokemon, but I think they could have done a whole lot better. The good folks over at the Pokemon place, wherever they create these decks for you, they could have done a little bit better of a job, because in the original Pokemon games, you got your choice of like some pretty popular Pokemon like Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, right? But this theme deck, you don't get any Pokemon that are household names. You get a bunch of random Pokemon, and I've been playing with some new players recently who I've sort of said, hey, let's play, and then they get this Mental Might deck, and they're like, I don't know who any of these people are, or these Pokemon are. So it's just not as fun to play when you don't know who any of the Pokemon are. And secondly, none of the Pokemon are really that good. I'm not saying it's impossible to win with this deck. It is definitely possible to win, but you're going to be facing an uphill climb because this deck is not very strong. So in this detailed review, I'm going to go through every single Pokemon that you can go through in this deck. We're going to talk about the Pokemon, we're going to see what they could be used for, which Pokemon are the better Pokemon, and which ones are not so good. And I usually have the Pokemon broken down into different tiers. The first tier that I have are the good Pokemon. So I have Pokemon that are good. These are strong Pokemon. These are the ones you really want to use. The second tier are the decent Pokemon. These Pokemon are not bad, but they're not at the high level Pokemon that you want to have. Then, right below that, we have situational Pokemon. These are Pokemon that can be okay, but only in very specific situations. Otherwise, you really wouldn't want them to be, on your bench or in your hand or even in the deck if you were building your own deck. Of course, this is a theme deck, so you don't have a choice. And the final Pokemon, sorry, I call them the lame Pokemon. These are Pokemon that they should have just omitted. They shouldn't have even put these Pokemon in. When you get them into your hand or when you're playing with them, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. These are the Pokemon that like make you want to quit the game because you don't know what to do with them. Okay? So, I gotta tell you, and I'm sad to tell you this, but for me, this Mental Might deck has 0 good Pokemon. None whatsoever. There is no Pokemon in this deck where I could point out and say, yeah, that Pokemon is good, and it would be good against lots of other decks. This is not a deck that has good Pokemon. So we're just gonna right past the good Pokemon list because there are none, unfortunately. We're gonna move right to the decent list. Okay, so let's jump into Pokemon Online and check out some of these cards. The first Pokemon that I'm looking at here is Swoobat, and I think Swoobat is actually a decent Pokemon. If you have Swoobat in your hand and Woobat, which is the basic Pokemon, is out, you're going to want to replace Woobat as soon as possible. See, Swoobat has 2 attacks that take only 1 energy to sort of unleash on the opponent. So you have Energy Gift, which gets you 2 psychic energy, and you can put them onto your Pokemon any way you like. That's pretty good. Getting 2 energy out of your deck and putting them onto Pokemon, that's actually not a bad ability. It doesn't take off any damage, but it powers up your Pokemon, and usually you can only put 1 energy down per time. So being able to put 2 is amazing, and then plus if you have 1 in your hand, you can put another one down, that's 3. So Energy Gift is a pretty good ability to have, and it's really nice. The only problem, like I said, is he has to be in your active spot, and you're not doing any damage to the opponent. You just kind of get this advantage. The other attack he has, though, it only costs 1 psychic energy. It's Heart Stamp, and it takes 30. It gives out 30 damage. That's pretty good for 1 psychic energy to hit for 30. I think that's a pretty strong ability. So Swoobat, pretty decent. He's still gonna get knocked out by, you know, really strong basic Pokemon. He's gonna get taken out by other bigger Pokemon, but he's gonna defeat a lot of your, you know, smaller Pokemon that are your starting early game Pokemon. And so if you can get Swoobat out, I think you have a decent chance of knocking out your opponent's Pokemon. Okay, so the next Pokemon, it's Delcatty, and Delcatty has a very similar ability to Swoobat. Okay, so Delcatty, if you look at Delcatty, they have the Energy Salon. It says search your deck for up to 3 different types of basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Again, I guess you're seeing a little theme in this theme deck. It's getting energy. Swoobat puts them right onto your Pokemon, and these ones go into your hand. Again, it only costs 1 energy, but unfortunately it doesn't deal any damage. Now, Delcatty has a Fake Out ability, which attacks for 30. That's not bad. Swoobat only took 1 energy. This one takes 2, but it has a chance to paralyze. So your chance to paralyze costs an extra colorless energy. I think it's not bad either, though. 2 energy is not too bad to put onto a Pokemon. This one has 80 HP, so I would say, again, a decent Pokemon. Mid-tier, not too weak, not too strong, but has some decent positives for you in terms of drawing cards and getting cards in, as well as a little bit of dealing damage potential. So we've just reached my favorite Pokemon of this deck, and it's Miltank. Miltank of all Pokemon. And Miltank looks like a cow. He's got the udders that he's just showing off there. But Miltank's an interesting Pokemon. First of all, Miltank is a basic Pokemon with 100 HP. So if you have him in the beginning of the game, you can go right out there. He can actually be sort of a punching bag to absorb damage and not die. That's really nice. But he also can, if you get 3 energy on him, you can use his Hammer In ability, which deals 60 damage. That's also pretty good. His Powerful Friends ability is also really nice because if you have a stage 2 Pokemon on the bench, he can actually do 80 damage for just 1 energy. So Miltank is a pretty versatile Pokemon. He is really easy to get out, really pretty strong for what he is. You know, in the beginning of the game, he can actually win you the game if you have either a stage 2 Pokemon or 3 energy on him. You can just hammer in, and just knock your opponents out. And in the late game, when maybe, you know, you've knocked out some of their Pokemon, higher level Pokemon, and you don't have much left, you throw Miltank out there. He can be kind of scary with 100 HP. So I think he's a pretty good overall Pokemon in this deck. Maybe my favorite Pokemon to have in this entire deck. The next Pokemon in my decent list is Furfrou. Furfrou is another colorless Pokemon, and they're sort of seem to be doing pretty well in this deck in terms of being the better Pokemon. Furfrou has Tight Jaw, which can deal 20 damage with the possibility of paralyzing the opponent. I like this deck in that many of the characters seem to have this paralysis ability, which is a really nice stalling tactic. It's really annoying for them if, you know, they get paralyzed. But it's also annoying to you because you have to flip a coin. And if you flip a coin and you don't get the paralysis, you know, life kind of sucks. And it's it's never good to always leave things up to chance, and I think this deck, as we'll mention later, has too much that leaves up to chance. Furfrou also has another attack that does 50 damage called Sharp Fang. It's okay, but Furfrou is like a worse version of Miltank in every single way. So, you know, he's not a poor Pokemon, but I think, you know, Miltank's a little bit better in that, and this is like the poor man's version of Miltank, even though this deck is totally the poor man's version of any other deck in the entire game. Okay, and that actually does it for the decent Pokemon. There's no other Pokemon I would consider to be decent. They're all worse, which is kind of terrible, actually. Okay, but the first one we're going to start with is Golett. Now, Golett looks like a beast. His picture is cool. He looks like some rock robot, really strong. But look at his attack. He has this thing called Beat, and it only takes off 10. He has 80 HP, he looks like a beast, and he can only take off 10 with an attack called Beat? Yeah. You know, his Mega Punch might come in handy in a pinch with, you know, a 3 energy cost, taking off 50. He's got 80 HP for a basic Pokemon, so he's a little bit better than, you know, your really weak basic Pokemon. But he's not really one you want out there, because you gotta power him up with 3 energy for a decent attack. It takes 3 energy to retreat him, so he might be just good as a stall tactic. Stall tactic? No. Stall tactic. That might be all he's good for. You use him as a meat shield, you put him out there, he tanks the damage while you try to power up, hopefully, some better Pokemon on your bench. Okay, so the star of this deck is supposed to be Gallade. Gallade is a stage 2 Pokemon, and, you know, you can see that Gallade is all foily and nice, and, you know, this is the one that should be the heavy hitter of the entire deck. I just think he's a situational Pokemon. I don't think Gallade is that great at all. Let's check out his power. He has the powerful Storm. Does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Okay, so that's a pretty good ability, especially if you have a lot of energy attached to a lot of your Pokemon. But again, I call that very, very situational, because you have to get the combos out in order for this to work. And the Pokemon in this deck, really, they just aren't that good. So in order to get powerful Storm out, you really have to add a lot of energy to the other Pokemon. So that's a very situational occurrence. You really have to get really into the mid game, late game to make this happen. His other attack is the Swift Lunge. Your opponent switches the defending Pokemon with one of his or her benched Pokemon. This one is also very situational, and it can be very good because you might want them to switch, but it could also be very bad if you don't want them to switch. Oftentimes, you know, you're chipping away at a Pokemon and one more turn can beat them. But if you, and you know, oftentimes your opponent's like, I want to get my Pokemon out of there. Well, you can't do that if you push them back anyway. So I'm not a huge fan of the Swift Lunge. Even though it does 80 damage, it's not that great. And Gallade has only 140 total HP, so Gallade's not exactly the strongest Pokemon either. So his powerful Storm can be very, very powerful. But again, it's very, very situational. And so I don't think it's that decent. I actually think it's a pretty difficult ability to get off. Plus, he's only got 140 HP. Just makes it really, really a difficult call to make Gallade a really good Pokemon. The final Pokemon in my situational category is Hoothoot. Hoothoot is kind of nice in that for 1 energy, you get to draw 2 cards. And if that's all it was, he would have been upgraded to the 1 tier up, a little bit better. But that's not what he has. He has a dual draw ability where you draw 2 cards and your opponent draws 2 cards. That is giving your opponent a pretty nice advantage. You know, your opponent's always going to want to be drawing cards out of their deck. So, especially in the early game when a character like Hoothoot would appear. So, it gives you 2 cards at the cost of giving them 2 cards. Plus, Hoothoot only has 60 HP, so he's, you know, he's your basic of basic Pokemons, and he has no attack. I was really considering putting Hoothoot into the lame Pokemon category, but I think there will be times where you will be desperate enough that you need cards where Hoothoot's ability can come in handy and maybe even save the day for you. So for that, Hoothoot gets right there into the situational category instead of dropping into the worst category of lame. Okay, we're moving on to the lame category of Pokemon, and the first Pokemon I'm going to talk about is Woobat. I told you when I talked about Swoobat that if you get Swoobat and Woobat's out there, replace him immediately. Check out what Woobat has. He only has 50 HP, weak, and he's got Dual Cut, which you have to flip 2 coins, and the attack does 10 damage times the number of heads. So you can actually do 0 damage if you hit 2 tails, only 10 damage, and if you're lucky, for 1 head, and then if you're really lucky, you get 2 heads and you get the 20 damage. I really dislike relying on coins because, again, there's so much uncertainty there, and so he's just a very weak Pokemon. He's getting knocked out really quick if he's your active Pokemon with only 50 HP. So he's a lame Pokemon. The only good thing is he turns into Swoobat, which is sort of a decent Pokemon. Okay, next up on our lame list is Ralts. Ralts, he has Psybolt, again, does no damage whatsoever. He has 60 HP, which is sort of your baseline basic Pokemon. But Psybolt, all it can do is potentially paralyze your opponent. Paralysis is very strong, so you can't have paralysis just working every time. That wouldn't be fair, obviously. But for Ralts, he's your ultimate staller. He can only stall until he gets knocked out, or you can evolve him. He's really not good for anything else, so Ralts, unfortunately, is lame. Evolving from Ralts is Kirlia, and Kirlia is a Pokemon you don't want to stay on for very long. Kirlia has Tiptoe Step, which sounds good. Draw a card for each psychic energy attached to this Pokemon. So, you know, if you have 1 energy on him, you get to draw a card. Decent drawing mechanic. You know, you feel like putting 2 cards on Kirlia, great, now you can draw 2. So that's a decent early on ability. But Kirlia only has 70 HP as a stage 1 Pokemon. So Kirlia is not exactly very strong and doesn't have a lot of, you know, ability to stay in the active position. The Double Slap ability is where you flip 2 coins and it does 20 times the damage. So you have the potential to do 0 damage, 20, and possibly 40. Yeah, very uninspiring attack, and again, it deals with coin flips, which makes, you know, your attack very uncertain, which makes Kirlia lame. And finishing off the lame list is Skitty. Skitty is very weak, again, 50 HP, so one of the weaker basic Pokemon. And Skitty has Heal Bell, which sounds like, oh, that's great, healing built in, but it only heals 10. And 10 damage is so minuscule. Now, it doesn't just heal it to Skitty, thankfully. It heals it from every Pokemon that you have out there. But again, 10 damage, it's almost negligible. There will be a time where I'm sure the 10 damage heal will help you win a game. But I think those are going to be very few and very far between. So I don't recommend Skitty's Heal Bell whatsoever. Though his Tail Whap for 10 for 1 energy isn't very inspiring either. So Skitty is just not a Pokemon you really want to have out ever. You want to evolve Skitty if you can. There's not much I can say about this Pokemon. There's just nothing that really inspires you with this Pokemon. The damage potential is not there. The healing potential is, again, just minuscule. So Skitty is someone you probably don't want to have. And if you're drawing Skitty, I'm sorry. All right, we're moving on to trainer cards, and actually, this deck has some really nice trainer cards, and if you use these effectively, you can do some pretty good damage with these cards. I'm actually pretty impressed with the damage and potential for damage that these cards can have. So let's take a look at them. First of all, we have Escape Rope. Escape Rope, let's read the card here. It says, each player switches his or her active Pokemon with one on his or her bench. Your opponent switches first, and then you get a switch, so you get to find out, who they pick. Switching Pokemon is so surprising, and it is so powerful. So being able to do that, you can switch out someone's powerful Pokemon for one that you can actually take on, or one that can't retreat. So I think Escape Rope is an excellent tool to use in any deck, and I'm glad they put it into this one. Next up we have Evo Soda, and Evo Soda is really nice too because it's like look through the deck, get an evolution, put it on a Pokemon right away unless it's like that first turn the Pokemon's out. But an instant evolution, that can be really good as well. You put a Pokemon in your active spot or someone's in your active spot and your opponent thinks, hey, I can take this guy out on the next turn. You play Evo Soda and kaboom. He's gonna be a little bit more powerful than they once were. You get the point. Evo Soda is gonna help you out. It's gonna be a really nice sort of item that you can use. The Great Ball, if you have it, you're always gonna wanna use it because you wanna draw those Pokemon right out of your deck, get them into your hand. The Great Ball lets you look at a bunch of cards at the top of your deck. If you find Pokemon there, you can grab them. It's a great card overall. I think it's almost always gonna be useful, so you might as well use it. It's a great addition to this deck, and there's two of them in there, so that's kind of nice. One of the absolute best cards you can get from the trainer pile is Professor's Letter. Professor's Letter just gets you 2 energy right away. So oftentimes I find myself needing energy, and so Professor's Letter is really, really nice in that I can just grab the energy that I need right away using that card and then start putting them on my Pokemon as I can. Usually I'm not a huge fan of healing cards that much, but Pokemon Center Lady is actually pretty good because it can actually heal a good amount of damage. 60 damage is pretty good amount of damage. So it's going to help you against those, lower and mid-tier Pokemon. And here's the kicker though, it removes all special conditions as well. So if a Pokemon's paralyzed or asleep or poisoned, confused, it will eliminate that and they're back into fresh fighting form. So for that, I think Pokemon Center Lady is super valuable. So that second portion of it is actually the really good part of the card. And then the first part of the card about, getting 60 damage healed is like icing on the cake. The Pokemon Fan Club is always a great card because again, fishing through your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, putting them into your hand, it's great because it speeds you up. It gets you the Pokemon that you need right away. It's not just one. It's not, you don't have to discard anything. You get 2 Pokemon for that. It's just an overall really, really strong card that, I'm so glad made it into this deck. Tierno, draw 3 cards. Enough said. It's gonna help you get through your deck. Strong decks have this card. Decks that rely on drawing cards have this card in it. So you're gonna want to use Tierno strategically, especially if you're low on cards, you draw a Tierno, wow, you're gonna be so happy that you got one. Thankfully, there are 2 in the deck, and it just nets you 3 cards right off the top. Very powerful, and of course, the more cards you can get in the hand, the better off you're gonna be, because then you have more options. The Hard Charm is like a shield for your Pokemon. It reduces damage by 20. That's actually very, very powerful and can be very annoying. it can be so annoying if a Pokemon has Hard Charm on it, because that makes your opponent really think about, oh, what do I have to do in order to really take out my opponent's Pokemon, especially since my attacks are getting reduced by 20. So for sort of a beginner's deck like this, a deck that's a little bit weaker, has weaker Pokemon, the Hard Charm is going to be essential to help your Pokemon stay alive. So Hard Charm is really important. I wish there were actually more Hard Charms in this deck. You only get one, but when you get it, you're going to want to use it to keep your Pokemon alive, because your Pokemon in this deck, they are weak. In the mid tier of the trainer cards is the Potion card. Potion heals for 30, and that might be okay, especially in the very beginning of the game, but as bigger and bigger Pokemon come out, Pokemon with bigger damage potential, healing 30 damage does nothing. It's inconsequential. So, you know, potions are really only good for that first part of the game, and it might save you. So that's why it's not really like a terrible card. It's just very situational, and I would say not very useful, but it might help you in a pinch. The Pokemon Center Lady is much, much better. Okay, and I have one card that I think is in the bottom tier of trainer cards, and that's the Roller Skates. You know, with Tierno, you can just draw 3 cards, and then you get 3 cards. He's a supporter, you can only do that once, but with Roller Skates, you have to flip heads in order for it to work. Again, flipping coins to do something like drawing 3 cards is just not worth it. If you're going to construct your own deck, you're not going to put Roller Skates in. I would put Roller Skates into a deck maybe to try to make that deck a little bit weaker if it was a very strong deck already. But Mental Might is not a strong deck, and this card just makes it even worse. So I don't know why this was in there. There's, I believe, 2 of them in this deck. If I double check, I think there's 2 of them. Yeah, there's 2 of them in the deck. So, yikes. If I had 2 of these in the decks, I would be very unhappy. I'd rather just have one more Tierno and not have Roller Skates at all. So my overall wishes for this deck are, I just wish there were Pokemon that were beefier. Maybe just even one really good Pokemon to make you excited about trying to get that Pokemon out and playing that Pokemon. A Pokemon that has like a really good damage potential with like 2 energy attached, and not reliant on other Pokemon like the star of this deck is. I think Gallade is like the star of this deck for whatever reason. I really wish that this deck had that one strong Pokemon that you could just be like, I can't wait to get that Pokemon out. Maybe a Pokemon with a really good ability that you can use at any time on the bench or in the active position. That doesn't exist here. It just is a weak deck. So I'm just wishing that they gave us a better deck to kind of start with. I know they want you to start with a weaker deck and motivate you to get better decks, but this deck is just so bottom of the barrel. I just wish they had given you something a bit better. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I wish they also gave you some Pokemon that were recognizable. You know, the Pokemon in this deck, they are not really known to people who don't watch Pokemon or who watch like really old Pokemon or people trying to get back into the game. These Pokemon, I didn't know who any of these Pokemon were. And so with that, it's just not that fun of a deck to play. So it's just like, I wish we had some Pokemon, at least if I knew who they were, it might be kind of fun to play with them. Like, if I had Bulbasaur in there, I'd be like, oh, Bulbasaur came out, cool. You know, not like, here's Ralts. And finally, I wish this deck was not so coin dependent. A lot of the attacks and obviously the chance to paralyze other Pokemon is very coin dependent. And so if you're going to have that, it's going to make your experience playing this deck, you know, very, very different from game to game, because sometimes those coins will be in your favor and sometimes they won't be. And so it just makes this deck very, very unreliable. And I wish they would somehow not get rid of all the coin flip, you know, cards in this deck, but at least have less of them. Okay, so let's talk about strategy with this deck. I think your main strategy with this deck is you're going to want to have Gallade out with Miltank out in front. Because what happens is, if Gallade is out, you have a stage 2 Pokemon, and Miltank has a very powerful attack that can deal 80 damage a time when you have Gallade out. And if you have 3 energy and no stage 2, at least he can still do 60 with 3 energy. So Miltank can actually be the guy just hitting and hitting and hitting your opponent's Pokemon. He's got a pretty strong attack and a healthy amount of HP, so he can stay out there and fight for you. And the really nice thing is, since he's a basic Pokemon, you can probably easily draw another Miltank, and so that another one can be on the bench waiting to go in, and you don't have to send Gallade in to fight. So if that one Miltank gets taken out, your opponent has to deal with another Miltank. I think that's really powerful. That can be very, very powerful and win you the game just like that. Miltank hitting for 80 damage or even 60 damage a pop. That's actually pretty good for a little basic Pokemon like that. But since this deck is so weak, one thing you need to know, especially if you're a new player, is, you have to give your Pokemon time to either get energy or evolve. That means don't be afraid to just send Pokemon out there as a meat shield, as fodder, to get taken out, knocked out, so that other Pokemon that you have in reserve can come out later when they're ready. Or maybe that you can draw some cards that might help you later. I've stayed alive in 1 games where I've just had to send out Pokemon to their doom just so that I have a chance later on in the game. And with this deck, you're probably going to have to do that quite often. They're going to be your stall tactic so that you can power up your Pokemon and actually have a decent chance. And even though I hate it, even though I hate these coin flips, you're going to want to put Pokemon out like Ralts out there, like Hoot out there, because even though their abilities either benefit the opponent, like Hoot giving them 2 cards, or Ralts having a coin flip and potentially paralyzing them, I would say you're going to have to put those guys out there. You just don't have anybody else to put out there. So even though these are potentially bad active Pokemon, you just have to bite the bullet and have them out there doing what they can do. Again, you're just trying to stall the game out till you can get the right combination of Pokemon. And a lot of other decks have lots of combinations that they can do to win the game. This deck has a very narrow amount of cards that can help you out. So you're going to want to stall till you can get that out and hopefully win the game against your opponent. And the final thing I'll have to say about this deck is just to use your trainers wisely. The strength of this deck really isn't in the Pokemon, but they are in the trainer cards. Those trainer cards have the potential to surprise, save them for the right moment, and surprise your opponent by making a switch or doing something like that that will catch your opponent off guard. This deck is called Mental Might, so you're going to have to use some of your own mental might with the trainer cards and with the cards you have in order to actually make the game winnable. Okay, so that's the strategy. Hold those trainer cards till they can pop and surprise your opponent. So, what are the strengths of this deck? Well, there's not a whole lot of strengths, but I would say Miltank is definitely a strength of this deck. I think Miltank can be used very, very effectively. Every time I've played this deck, I've had to use Miltank, and Miltank has done a really good job for me. This deck also has plenty of opportunity to paralyze opponents, and flipping heads to paralyze, it sucks, but you know what? For some reason, when you play online, sometimes the coins get stuck, flipping heads or tails. But I mean, whatever it is, you're going to be able to paralyze opponents, and that is going to be annoying for them. So even though half the time it doesn't work, if it really went 50-50, at least half of the time you will get their Pokemon paralyzed, and that gives you breathing room and time to power up other Pokemon on the bench. So don't just disregard Pokemon where you have to flip a coin to paralyze. Still put them out there, because they will be able to paralyze at least some of the time, and that buys you more time. And finally, I already mentioned this, but the trainers are a strength of this deck. They can be used very effectively, like if you used Escape Rope or, Pokemon Healing Center when the opponent thinks you're going to be knocked out by next turn. These are things that can surprise your opponent. So learn the trainer cards in this deck. They are a huge strength of this deck. Okay, and for the weaknesses, I've already mentioned them, but number one, this deck is not fun to play because the Pokemon in it, they're not known. They're just not a fun group of Pokemon to play with. Miltank is kind of the funniest Pokemon. I think he just looks funny and he's strong. He might be the funniest and funnest Pokemon to play with, but other than that, there's not really any outstanding Pokemon. Not even a Pokemon that you can be like, yes, I can't wait to get this guy out. That doesn't exist in this deck, unfortunately. This deck has a very high potential just to get annihilated by a deck of any other caliber, because every other deck is going to be higher caliber than this one. So it's a huge weakness. You're going to have to use a lot of your own mental might just to overcome this deck, to overcome your opponent's deck. And if you can do that, then you have a chance of winning a game with this deck. I'm going to give this deck an overall rating now. As you can see, I'm not really hyped on this deck. This deck is not a good deck. I wish the good folks over at Pokemon would have done a better job with an initial deck. I guess I can understand why they give you a deck like this, because they want you to get out of this deck as quickly as possible, and possibly that's their motivation. They want to motivate you to get out of this deck. But I also think they should motivate you to want to play this game, and this deck doesn't really do that, sadly. So the overall grade for this deck, I'm going to give, it's going to get an F+. Yes, you heard me right. F+. How do you get an F+? Well, this deck totally fails, but it's not a complete fail because I think you can still eke out wins with this deck, especially if you're playing, new people against new people. You can find ways to win with this deck, but just in almost every other facet, this deck is going to be the weakest deck you can possibly have in the game. So, if you play this game and you use this deck, just use it till you can get another deck, get out of it, and then play with something better. Again, this is Luke. Find me on Pokemon the Trading Card Game online at BlackSheep217 and also on Facebook at Zoom Battle Gym. I would love for you to get to know me and for me to get to know you, and then we can play some games together. It'll be a ton of fun. Thanks for watching this review. Check out my other reviews on the channel. I always appreciate a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.